Welcome to This Explainer. Listen, if you're navigating the U.S. investment visa world right now, 2026 is turning out to be a massive pivot point. We're talking stricter rules, heavy documentation, and a really active political landscape. So let's just jump right in. We've got a clear roadmap of the critical shifts happening right now, and we're going to break down exactly how this tangled legislative web actually impacts your path to citizenship. Okay, let's dive into this. First, we'll set the stage with the 2026 immigration landscape. Second, we'll look at the SAVE Act's impact. Third, we'll evaluate regional centers. Fourth, we'll compare the classic EB-5 to the proposed Gold Card. And finally, we'll wrap up with actionable strategies for your success.
All right, Part 1, the 2026 immigration landscape. Let's set the stage.
Pursuing a green card as an investor today means navigating a system that is changing on multiple fronts all at once. And one of the biggest pieces of the puzzle, the SAVE America Act. That stands for the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act. Now, on paper, this requires proof of U.S. citizenship for voter registration and a government photo ID at the polls. It passed the House back in February 2026. But here's the thing. While it's framed around election integrity, this legislation significantly tightens up how federal citizenship verification works across the board. Moving on to Part 2, the SAVE Act's impact. Let's look at the actual investor's journey. So what does a voting law have to do with your investment visa? Well, the SAVE Act doesn't actually modify the direct EB-5 rules, but let's move to and see how this builds friction throughout the whole pipeline. Step 1 is your initial capital investment and visa petition. Step 2 is getting that conditional green card. And Step 3 is naturalization. That's exactly where the legislation's real impact hits, because let's face it, your end goal probably isn't just a green card, it's full U.S. citizenship. And since the SAVE Act demands much stricter federal cross-referencing for continuous residency and lawful admission, it seriously affects your downstream long-term planning. So, the crucial point is this. In this new environment, having a completely clean, perfectly consistent record from day one is exactly what you need for a smooth verification process later on. On the flip side, inconsistent documentation. That is now a severe liability. If you have incomplete paperwork, even way back at your initial petition, you are looking at massive delays, intense federal scrutiny, and real risk to your entire petition. Literally every single record needs to be spotless. All right, Part 3, evaluating regional centers. This is the main EB-5 vehicle where investor capital is pooled for economic modeling rather than direct employment, which really helps reduce your administrative burden. If you're going this route, let's talk numbers. $800,000. That is the current minimum investment if you're putting your money into a targeted employment area, often referred to as a TEA. We're generally talking about rural regions or high unemployment areas here. And just as a reminder, that threshold was officially updated under the EB-5 Reform and Integrity Act of 2022. Now, what if you want to invest outside of those specific high unemployment or rural TAs? Well, in that case, the standard minimum investment jumps right up to $1,050,000. But here's the catch. Regardless of the dollar amount, regional centers are under a microscope in 2026. You've got to watch out for 3 absolutely crucial compliance factors. First, post-2022 oversight. Mandatory integrity reviews and enhanced reporting are the law now. Second, those strict documentation standards we just talked about apply here too. And third, pre-investment verification. You have got to check a center's USCIS authorization status before you commit your capital. Actually, scratch that. It's not just checking, it's confirming they are in perfect standing, because we've seen several centers face deauthorization recently, and that puts all the connected investor petitions in serious jeopardy. A question we see pop up constantly right now: can I still apply for the EB-5 visa in 2026? The short answer? Yes, absolutely. The program is fully active. But you have to plan for retrogression. If you're an investor from a high-demand country like India or China, you are facing severe backlogs due to per-country caps. We're talking wait times of a decade or more for some Indian nationals. The SAVE Act doesn't fix those backlogs, but it does guarantee that when you finally reach the end of that 10-year wait, your naturalization paperwork is going to be heavily scrutinized. Which brings us to Part 4, EB-5 versus the Gold Card, a shifting paradigm. And this brilliantly illustrates the stark contrast between these two models. On one hand, you have the active EB-5 visa. That's an $800,000 to $1.05 million minimum. It requires job creation, has an annual cap of about 10,000 visas, and offers a tested path to citizenship.
On the other hand, you have the Trump administration's proposed Gold Card. That one demands a flat $5 million investment, completely drops the job creation requirement, has no specified cap, and its path to actual citizenship is pretty unclear right now. It fundamentally shifts the focus from the EB-5's economic development model directly over to a purely transactional one.
Now, if you're already in the EB-5 pipeline, the program is fully operational. But as our source material perfectly points out, and this is a great quote, the uncertainty around future program availability makes timing a critical factor in any investment decision. Right now, USCIS hasn't announced any plan to grandfather existing petitions if a new framework takes over. So, mid-process investors, you're facing some very real program uncertainty right now. All right, let's get practical. Part 5. Strategies for investor success. Navigating the landscape. So what should you do right now? Honestly, the single most important step you can take to mitigate all these compliance risks is to partner up with a highly qualified EB-5 investment advisor. You really need someone like EB-5 Choice, which was mentioned in our source text, who has deep post-2022 USCIS experience. The current environment heavily rewards investors who rely on genuinely informed, expert guidance at every single stage of the process. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how straightforward the strategy actually is. First, vet your regional center thoroughly. Look at their audit records meticulously. Second, act on current law, not speculation. I know the Gold Card is making headlines, but it is just a proposal. The EB-5 is operational today, so base your moves on the active rules. And third, build airtight documentation from day one. With the SAVE Act pushing verification standards higher and higher, having pristine paperwork is literally your absolute best defense for your eventual naturalization. Which leaves us with this final, completely vital question. Will your initial EB-5 documentation hold up to 2026's stricter federal scrutiny at the final hurdle of naturalization? It's a tough environment out there for sure. But with solid planning, expert advice, and an absolute commitment to clean records, your path to U.S. citizenship is still highly achievable. Take a hard look at your own immigration strategy, review your paperwork, and ask yourself if you're truly prepared for what's next.